Food addiction myths part 1. This is controversial stuff that most people don't want to talk about. So let's talk about it. The first myth is that food addiction doesn't exist. This argument is used generally by people that don't understand the neurobiology of addictions and assume that all people should be able to moderate all substances if they just try hard enough. This was once the same argument used related to alcohol, cocaine, nicotine. It invalidates people's lived experiences and stresses personal responsibility over corporate responsibility. Food addiction myths part 2. Myth number 2 is that food addiction measurement is pseudoscience and not valid. When in reality, the instrument used to measure food addiction, the Yale Food Addiction Scale, has been validated at the highest level of scientific inquiry and used in multiple countries across the world. It's also been updated to reflect changes in diagnostic criteria for substance use disorder. It has undergone rigorous peer review. Food addiction myths part 3. There's a myth that food can be as addictive as heroin or cocaine. This one hit the popular press a few years ago based on animal studies. But in humans, food addiction is much more like caffeine or nicotine than it is like heroin or cocaine. It can be so subtle that some people don't even realize they have it or would prefer not to admit it. The fourth myth is that food addiction science doesn't account for restrictive eating patterns. While the instrument itself doesn't account for dietary restraint, there have been several studies that document addiction-like eating even after adjusting for other contributors to eating pathology. While it is true that some people develop food addiction from too much dieting, there's lots of people with these symptoms who have never imposed restrictive eating. Myth 5 is that food addiction recovery is a weight loss journey. While many people that seek recovery from food addiction do end up losing weight, food addiction recovery is not synonymous with weight loss. In fact, too much emphasis on weight gives food addiction a bad reputation for perpetuating diet culture. Recovery is about sanity, not vanity. Myth number 6 is that if someone has a food addiction, they need to be on a low-carb diet to recover. For many people with ultra-processed food addiction, going too low in carbs can actually make the symptoms worse. People often choose this route in an effort to lose weight, but I really want to emphasize that food addiction recovery and weight loss are not the same. The 7th myth is that people with food addiction need to weigh and measure all their food. The key to food addiction recovery is not about eating less, but about eating more of the foods that will help recover gut homeostasis and balance out brain chemistry. One can recover from addiction-like eating and learn to listen to their body at the same time. This is why we call it recovery. The 8th myth is that food addiction culture is the same as diet culture. This may seem true at first glance, but for people who actually have addiction-like eating, many are fighting for their sanity and willing to go to great extremes for a different life. And so if someone chooses to opt out of commercialized food for the sake of their brain chemistry, this is not the same thing as diet culture. Food addiction myths part 9. There's a myth that minimally processed foods such as tropical fruits or quinoa or even nuts can be addictive. Meanwhile, there is no documented evidence that fruits or whole grains or nuts can be addictive. While many people do report loss of control around some of these foods, they do not light up the brain the way ultra-processed foods do. The 10th myth is that food addiction should be better classified as a behavioral disorder because it's really not about the food. For many people, eating challenges are not about the food, but for others, the food actually matters more because everyone has their own unique neurochemistry and responds differently to different substances. Some people have brain chemistry that's highly susceptible to addictions and others do not. Food addiction myths part 11. The next myth is that if someone has a food addiction, they need to be in a 12-step program. While I'm a fan of 12-step recovery, it's not the only path for people with food addiction. In fact, many times these programs overemphasize weight loss and promote unnecessary dietary restriction, which can lead to rebound overeating and weight cycling. 12-step is great if you work the program and utilize the social support, but not if it's used as a diet club. The last myth is that once someone has a food addiction, they will always be addicted to food. Many people develop addictions due to underlying stress, trauma, adversity, and unresolved emotional pain. After doing some deep healing work, oftentimes for many years, one's relationship with food can change. It's so important to think positively.